Welcome to the Grip Strip Podcast, episode 86, the championship time edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. We'll be talking about plenty of NASCAR titles that were decided, and probably the Formula One title was decided last weekend as well. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm here with my co-host, Josh Fine. What's good, brother?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Phil. It's been an interesting weekend of racing that we had. All three championships came down to the wire, mostly in NASCAR. And then, of course, Formula One, Max Verstappen went out and added to his championship lead and probably began to put the closing stages on that title there. So over Lewis Hamilton. So we'll talk about that. Jaguars won on Sunday, crushing the Bills 9-6 or 6-9, however you want to put it. And first win on U.S. soil in 420 days. And the other Josh Allen, the one on defense was really good on Sunday. He helped you out in fantasy. So, we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I had the right Josh. I mean, I'm a fan of the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, but I'm also now a fan of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Josh Allen, who the former number 5 overall pick, I believe, of the Jacksonville Jaguars, top 10 draft pick for sure, from Kentucky, who went nuts.
I think it was like 7. Yeah.
Yeah, something around there. I mean, and he went nuts on Sunday, and I'm like, okay, I like that. He wasn't, the fact of the matter is Demi had TJ Watt. And he scored like 18,000 points. But Josh Allen did work for me, knocked off Wilson. I mean, he's still going to win the regular season, more than likely. He's still going to win the double win deal, but the guy is beatable. We have proven that. Now, in my case, it's about making the playoffs. Josh is doing really well in that sense. He's ahead. He got me pretty good a few weeks ago, and he's doing pretty good. Much better than his actual team. I'm doing much better than my actual team. I might get a few punches in on that, considering the hapless performance they put in against the Arizona Cardinals and Colt McCoy. They lost to Colt McCoy. They let some guy named Ito something or another baptize Drake Kirkpatrick. Josh Norman got benched because he's a bitch. And he can't cover anybody. But it's more about Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, basically being geldings, and taking it in the ass for Jed York and company. But we'll get into that. We'll get into Mexico, NASCAR. The roundup will cover Bahrain 2 for World Endurance Championship, Supercars at Sydney last week and this week, MotoGP and Moto2 at Algarve in Portugal. Now we'll be going to Valencia, Petit Le Mans this weekend. So that's one of the 2 big races this coming weekend, along with the Brazilian Grand Prix. We'll get into the news of Kyle Kirkwood, the wonderkind in American open wheel racing, who a few weeks ago might have been in the 26 car for Andretti Autosport, on the same week that his teammate, who was much less competitive, got a ride in the 4th Andretti Autosport car and is basically a root beer float head double. Kyle Kirkwood will now be driving for AJ Foyt. So it's got a lot of feelings and thoughts of Robbie Gordon going back to like 1993 here, because of how much talent Kyle Kirkwood has, how much winning he's done. Can this be like all these years later? Can it be like Robbie Gordon coming to AJ Foyt Racing, albeit he was I think Kyle Kirkwood's more polished. We'll get into all that. We'll get into football. We'll get into fantasy football, Josh's sim segment, and show close. So, let's start with the Mexican Grand Prix. The race was basically over in the first corner because through whatever plans, the Mercedes team had to slipstream with each other and try to hold off Max Verstappen, they allowed Max Verstappen to get past. Everybody wanted to blame Valtteri Bottas because he didn't push Max Verstappen off the track. I would venture to say the Mercedes cars were crap, and it didn't really matter. If you hear Karen Horner, he's still whining about Yuki Tsunoda going off the track. Even though it had that, at the end of the day, it didn't matter. in the end, you had Yuki Tsunoda went off the track. He's having to get out of the way. Sergio Perez, for whatever reason, went and followed him in qualifying. And then Max Verstappen, because of the blue flags, didn't get the pole, but got the best position to qualify in. It doesn't even pay to qualify in the front row at Mexico. It literally pays for you to qualify third, which is idiotic. But I don't think it mattered. If he qualified on pole, I think he would have gotten the start and he'd have gotten away. Instead, he gets third. He goes past both Mercedes. Valtteri Bottas gets hit by Ricciardo. Ricciardo's day was over. Bottas's day was over. They got into DRS trains of disaster. Lewis Hamilton basically was holding on for dear life the whole entire race to barely beat Sergio Perez. It was pretty farcical event, to say the least, for Mercedes. Max Verstappen ends up dominating, winning by 16 and a half seconds. Sergio Perez had much newer tires at the end. They were doing they were able to go and alternate their strategies, but Perez, even with newer tires, finished, It's 1.2 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton, in third. And then there was a huge gap to Pierre Gasly, who finished fourth, but had a great run. Great weekend. Charles Leclerc finished fifth. Ferraris finished fifth and sixth, while the McLarens only scored a solitary point with Lando Norris. Sebastian Vettel, Kimi Räikkönen, Fernando Alonso in between the two Ferraris and Lando Norris. The three veteran former world champions, you're talking about 7 world championships between that trio. So a great trio of the guys that were around here, and, talking about the early mid 2000s to, of course, Vettel's time here a decade ago or so. Of course, Bottas had issues. Russell had a brutal weekend. Ricciardo had issues too, so that also probably assisted in some of the finishing results. Yuki Tsunoda crashed on the first lap, along with Mick Schumacher, with an assist from Esteban Ocon after the initial incident with Valtteri Bottas and Daniel Ricciardo. So, that was basically it. I was doing fantasy. I think I was making my fantasy team for Mike Sanders' NASCAR game during the race because it was so bad. My mom was watching it and couldn't really. It was like it's hard to basically explain that the race is over. But I'm like, the race is over a long time ago. So I'm just going to do other things. I was checking my fantasy football teams, and I was trying to figure out how I was not going to be a complete bummer on the Grid Talk podcast, since I knew that this basically was the day that Lewis Hamilton lost the world championship. And I thought that a while ago. I think I was guilty of thinking that the championship was over months ago. But this felt different, Josh. After the U.S. Grand Prix and this race, I think it's over now. But what are your thoughts on, and what did you feel about the race? Because I watched the whole race. Then I decided to change over to what we're going to discuss here in a little bit, because I knew what was going to happen with that, generally speaking, there too.
Yeah, first of all, as we talk about this, I'll just briefly talk about the Crew 3 launch that's happening not too far away from me. So, SpaceX and NASA launching their Crew. It's happening right now, and it's pretty awesome to watch that. But no, going back to Formula One, I think Lewis Hamilton. I think it's probably virtually over, like you said. But there's still a chance he could get on a heater late in the. They still have a handful of races left, but it's become to that virtual unlikely portion where it's not likely to happen. It's going to take a lot. Lewis would have to basically win all the races remaining here, and then Max would have to finish obviously in second or lower, and probably at third or lower to really tighten it up quickly, so Lewis can get back into it. And based on the schedule, with Lewis's history and Max's history, just really hard to foresee any of that happening, especially with the pace that Red Bull has had this year compared to Mercedes. They've been fairly more dominant over course of the the season, having a lot more pace, a lot more speed in their car. Lewis would have to take a lot. They'd have to bring out their best car, and then would have to have a lot of things happen in the race or in the remaining races for them to have any chance at the title. So, it's basically a Hail Mary that they would have to have for Max or for Lewis to have any shot at the title. So we'll see what happens. I mean, anything can happen still. Of course, there's we still have time in the season, but it's looking closer that Max is going to end up wrapping up this title. So unfortunately for Lewis fans, it's disappointment. If you're a Max fan, certainly excited to see somebody else besides Lewis win for the first time, or Mercedes win the F1 title for the first time since 2014. You had Lewis and Nico Rosberg back in 2016. There's only champions that we've had in Formula One since then. But so I guess it's nice to see somebody different. But of course, it would be also interesting to see it be a little bit more competitive. I mean, it has been competitive, but a little bit more competitive to where, kind of like how in NASCAR we've seen the championship course that's structured to come down to the final race. Well, of course, in IndyCar, the points always comes down to the final race. Maybe something like that happening in Formula One, where we still see a head-to-head battle in the last race of the year, or even the second to last race of the year. So disappointing on that part, but they've both had a good fight throughout the year. They both had their ups and downs throughout it. So both of them should be commended for really challenging, really successful fight throughout the year. But I mean, Max just able to continue to dominate, and like you said, use the draft at the beginning of the race, the slipstream, get around both the Mercedes, and then smooth sailing from there.
Yeah, it was straightforward, and something that has become more of the norm this year compared to many years past for the people that weren't fans of Lewis Hamilton dominating. Well, Max is dominating now, and hard time believing that's going to change, but we'll discuss the Brazilian Grand Prix. They'll have a sprint as well for whatever reason this weekend. On Saturday, they'll have Friday afternoon qualifying, one practice, Friday afternoon qualifying, then they'll have Saturday, one practice, and then the sprint, and then the race. So we will see what happens with that. If it really makes much of a difference. It hasn't, so far with these two sprints, there hasn't been a whole heck of a lot that's came from them, so I have a hard time believing that much is going to come from them. Of course, much from this one especially. They'll be doing Brazil this weekend, of course, and Qatar next weekend, since the geniuses at Formula One thought that the logistics of running the U.S. Grand Prix, then taking a week off, then running Mexico, and then Brazil and Qatar was a great idea, instead of just doing the U.S. Grand Prix, Brazil, or Mexico and Brazil back to back to back, taking a week off, then running Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Abu Dhabi 3 weeks in a row to go and destroy all the people that actually make this thing go and happen. Versus it's whatever, considering all the money these assholes have, you think that would be the way they do things. But oh well. The points going into this weekend's race, of course, Max Verstappen has a 19-point lead on Lewis Hamilton. Josh went through basically what Lewis would need, not even taking into account the fastest lap point. Lewis is going to need a Hail Mary, as Josh said earlier, for this to work. Bottas has a 20-point lead on Sergio Perez. For third, Lando Norris is fifth, but only 12 points ahead of Charles Leclerc. There was a while earlier this year that Lando Norris was third in points, and it was a big gap. Recent races, of course, Bottas getting a win at Mother Russia. All these things have kind of played recent races have played against Lando Norris, and now there's a possibility he could lose fifth in the Drivers' Championship, might even fall to seventh. His buddy Carlos Sainz is only 20 and a half out. Ricardo is eighth, actually. Now he's 45 points out of the top five. Gasly, after another solid performance, is ninth in points. and probably going to finish there. Fernando Alonso's extended his gap. He's in 10th. He's 14 points out of Ocon. Ocon could get overtaken by Sebastian Vettel. In the constructors battle, right now, Mercedes and Red Bull, it's a point. Mercedes is up by 1 point. So the possibility of Red Bull getting both the drivers and constructors championship is back on. Ferrari has extended their lead in the constructors standings to 13 over McLaren after the nightmare weekend for them. Alpine and AlphaTauri, after Gasly's fourth place finish, are tied with for fifth in a constructors championship, and then the rest of the car teams are all kind of where they're going to be. Trying to see where else. It's like Mercedes, I mean, they had no answers. I mean, to be fair, the qualifying situation, it could have been done prior to the Sunday itself if the Red Bulls had been able to run their qualifying, I guess, but wasn't meant to be in that sense. And in terms of the rest of the field, I think you look at what transpired with Bottas and Ricciardo. Those two guys falling out allowed the former world champions to all kind of finish up front or finish in the top 10. And in turn, it also provided some interesting results behind, of course, the big battle. Gasly standing out. Ferrari has picked up, I think, the second half of the season since I said this on Grid Talk, that since Lando had that accident at the Belgian Grand Prix in qualifying, that he's lost whatever mojo he had. Granted, he finished second behind Ricciardo at the Italian Grand Prix. But to be fair, Ferrari has been much better for the last 3 months plus whatever than McLaren has. McLaren definitely seemed to be on the upper hand early in the season, but Ferrari has taken that mantle over. Their consistency more or less has been the key, and I think the balance. We've talked about the driver combination. Their argument, of course, can be made. Of course, you have Max Verstappen, who's going to be the world champion more than likely, and in Lewis at Mercedes. But in terms of balance, the Ferrari driver combination might be the best combination they've had in a long, long time. And they also have one of, if not the best driver combination in the sport right now, which means with the 2022 rules changes, Ferrari could be back, which would make so many people happy. I mean, there's so many pieces there, so many good stories there. You got Gasly and what he's doing to basically carry a team on his back. You have the Ferrari duo doing what they're doing to lift themselves up. You had some of these old, former champions up there. Sergio Perez kind of making it seem like he could possibly win his home Grand Prix. There's a lot of, to be fair, behind the lead battle, there was actually, behind Max Verstappen, there actually was interesting stuff going on. It's just that Mexico is not exactly the greatest. The Hermanos Rodriguez circuit is not one of the greatest for anything really, or overtaking or whatever. I guess for fandom it is, if you're in that infield, the goofy stadium section. But there's a lot of intriguing storylines as we get into the last 4 races of the season, Josh.
Yeah, definitely a lot of intriguing storylines, especially, with the midfield. And you talk about McLaren versus Ferrari. And Lando Norris, he's had 4 podiums. Ricciardo's had 1. Of course, that was his win. Carlos Sainz has had 3 podiums, and then Charles Leclerc has had 1 podium. But all of with McLaren, their results have been more flashier, right? Because they had that win. Lando's finished 4 times on the podium, but I think with Ferrari, I think their results are more consistent, right? They continue to quietly get 6th, 7th place finishes. They're getting in the points, and while it's nice to have a win for McLaren, at the same time you have Ferrari just being able to consistently get results, and that helps them continue to put up points, and then they get into the Constructors Championship. They're going to be ahead of McLaren. So all of that you have to factor in. Just the results versus the wins. So that's something to think about with Formula One, with the midfield there. And also in this race, I mean, we had former champions finishing all in a row. You had Vettel, you had Raikkonen, and you had Alonso all finishing together. And of course, all of them are a lap down. But of course, probably had help at least from that initial incident on the first lap with Tsunoda and Ricardo, Bottas, and Schumacher all getting some kind of involvement in that accident there. And then Ricardo finished a lap down after having to replace the front wing. So that took him out of contention, basically, although recover, at least I guess it's some kind of recovery going from the back to 12th, but not much there. And then, Ocon was involved in that as well, as Tsunoda drove over his tire. And then it was, definitely a good race for Vettel, and also, Stroll finished in 14th, 2 laps down. So, not really a great result for the team. But for me, I think the highlight was Gasly, because he wasn't really up there at the beginning, but then I think later on he was able to after the first restart, or after the safety car, he was kind of up there in the pack with the Red Bull and the Mercedes. So that was a good progress for them. Again, shows that he's carrying the team for AlphaTauri. So a lot of things we have to see, like with Ferrari versus McLaren. They continue the last 4 races of the year. Ferrari I don't think they'll get a win, but do we see a podium out of either those cars or both of them compared to McLaren? And I think Pierre Gasly continuing to put up solid results, quietly put up results. We'll see if he's able to continue getting points finishes for his team, carrying his team.
And I think for Yuki Tsunoda, he had a good weekend at Mexico City, at a track he's never been at before. So you consider Qatar, you have Saudi Arabia. Those are 2 tracks that are going to be new for everybody. It could be an opportunity for him to go and stand out and do something to help in that battle for possibly getting 5th in the Constructors title over the Alpine team, who has a win this year. When it comes to Ferrari, I think in the end, Ferrari's going to end up taking 3rd in Constructors, just based on the momentum. I think it's in their favor now, and the balance is just there with the Sainz and Leclerc. Lando is falling off a little bit. Daniel Ricciardo is not consistent enough right now for it to really turn around. And I mean, maybe things will turn around. I mean, who knows? Possibly, but I don't see it. It's something that we have. We have time, possibilities of other stuff coming up with the rest of these races, with the new races, but we'll see what Ferrari can do. I think Ferrari is going to be able to come through and get 3rd. And in regards to the 5th in the Drivers' Championship, could get really interesting as we get to the end of this season. We'll switch from Formula One for now, and we'll get back to that later. We'll switch from Formula One. We'll go to NASCAR. Kyle Larson ends one of, his season really, to be fair, isn't over. He's probably going to jump in a midget and run the Turkey Night Grand Prix and win that fucking thing too. Probably run some other crap and win in that. And his horrible wife will go and shotgun beers. But the fact of the matter is, he went out there and won his 10th race of 2021 and won his first career Cup Series championship. Young money is definitely the big money now, and he came through to do something that a few years ago, who knew? There's thoughts whether he was ever going to come through like that, and he was able to. And this year it started out, kind of rocky here and there, but he was able to, after he gave away Atlanta the 5th, 6th race of the season. He had already won at Vegas, but he gave away Atlanta to Ryan Blaney, and from that point on, I think he had Truex up there for a little while, Logano, Keselowski. I think in the month of May, things started to turn around to where the momentum went in his favor. Once they went to the Coca-Cola 600, and then from the Coca-Cola 600 on, it basically became a Kyle Larson benefit, won the All-Star race, won Nashville. There's a lot of winning he was doing, a lot of different types of racetracks. And, when you think about this playoff situation, he won Bristol, he won at the Roval, then he won the first two races of the round of 8, and then he won. So he did similar to what Tony Stewart did, winning 5 out of the 10 races in the playoff. Not to the same, not nowhere near the same drama as Tony had in regards to winning that championship. It was more convoluted in this sense. A great pit stop preceded by David Starr having a rotor explode and leaving debris on the racetrack. Assisted what was possibly Martin Truex and Denny Hamlin. They were 1 and 2, and I think Martin Truex was getting away. He probably was going to win that race, but then that caution came out. And to be fair to all of those guys, I think they all were up there, had their runs up front. You look at the other than Hamlin, he didn't lead a lap in this race, which was shocking. Chase Elliott led 94 laps. Larson led the most in the end. Truex led the third most laps. So really, one of those 3 guys was destined to win this race. Truex and Larson won the stages. Elliott was up there all day until the end. There was also a fortuitous bump that by Elliott that assisted Kyle Larson aero-wise and almost gave him more downforce, grip, whatever, and made his car better, which is convenient. Larson, Truex, Hamlin, Ryan Blaney in, what's his name? Why am I forgetting? Todd Gordon's last race as crew chief finished 4th. Elliott, as defending series champion, finished 4th out of 4 and 5th overall. Eric Almirola finished 6th, so good run for him to end the year in the IHOP Smithfield Ford. Kyle Busch 7th, Harvick 8th, who was up front early in the race and then disappeared later conveniently. Christopher Bell 9th, and Brad Keselowski 10th in his last race for Penske after 11 years at 11, 12, whatever, how many years it was at Penske. And they did a bunch of great tributes. They brought out the glass that he had when he won his championship and put more Miller Lite in it. Considering what we're going to talk about in regards to the Truck Series, Brad handled his beer a lot better this time. But yeah, Kyle Larson, I think we've been saying this for a while, Josh, but 5 out of 10 in this playoff, kind of put the bow on this present for Kyle Larson. He comes through, fat fell, and gets a champion again. He has 2 years in a row. His team has won the championship. He's gotten more marketing for HendrickCars.com, I think, this year than he's ever had. And he has probably one of the best duos. Well, you're talking about Ferrari's duo. I think the combination of Larson and Clyde is hard to beat right now for a lot of teams. Toyota has issues with youth. Ford has issues with youth. But Chevy definitely doesn't, because they have Larson and they have Clyde. So Larson came through there. He clutched up. His pit crew clutched up there late in the race to go and give them that championship. And Cliff Daniels gets his first championship. All these guys that were part of Jimmy Johnson's last year, I guess they get to realize the potential that was there. With the guy who can win in basically anything.
I mean, for Kyle Larson, we talked about qualifying before. Last week we had Joe Passero on, and we talked about what qualifying would impact for the championship for. And I mean, for me, I feel like I probably forgot that whoever wins the pole would have the first pit stall. And Kyle Larson won the pole on Saturday. It had the first pit stall selection for the race, and that obviously was a huge benefit for them because whenever they had a yellow, Kyle Larson was usually one of the first cars off pit road if he wasn't the first car, especially on that last caution restart. He's able to get able to restart first, come out off pit road first, and that basically won him the championship there. And of course, driving on the track as well. And I mean, throughout that race, when stage 2, I think they were able to get off in first place, and they had that opportunity to win that stage as well. So Kyle Larson's pit crew helped him win this race and win the championship. And like you said in his interview, it wasn't just his victory; it was a team victory because of that. And talk about his championship run throughout this year. I mean, even before he won the 600, there was a couple of races there where he started to knock off a couple of top fives, and you could kind of tell he was going to get on a run pretty soon. And go back to the throwback Darlington race. Remember, he finished in second to Martin Truex and might have had a chance to win that race. Could have won Kansas, finished second at Coda to Chase Elliott. So he was starting to get up on an even for 600, and just throughout. I mean, since then, I mean, has been pretty on point with his ability to win races, and just has had a fairly dominant year. 10 wins, first time we've had double-digit wins since Jimmy Johnson in 2007, and which was now the 5 car with Kyle Larson. So a lot of history there. Of course, Jimmy Johnson's crew is able to go from finishing out a legendary career, and then they get back to winning titles, which is what Jimmy did, of course, winning 7 of them during his career there. So, Larson continuing to, I mean, it was a dominating season for him, and he was just able to use the high line, of course, and I think he definitely benefited from having a short run, because it seemed like his car, Chase Elliott's car, they had a 30 lap run where they were really fast, but then after about 30 laps, their cars faded, and then Joe Gibbs' cars, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex, had a lot more pace, and you saw that when they had that long green flag run in stage 3. It looked like Kyle Larson started to fade back to fourth, and it's like, well, maybe it's over for him. Chase Elliott was still trying everything, about hit the wall in the front stretch, trying to get up to Denny Hamlin. And then it was looking like maybe Martin Truex and Denny Hamlin duke it out for the win. Of course, the front brakes on David Starr explode, and then that resets everything. Kyle Larson gets off pit road first, and then just drives like 25 perfect laps to get the title. And then Truex, starting to catch back up to them within the last couple of laps, got within half a second on the backstretch before turn 3. Maybe could have, sent it in there and everything, but I think he would have had to have been a little bit closer. And plus, of course, the lapped car was on the inside line, so Truex wasn't really able to close anyways. So definitely a very close race throughout that. Throughout the entire race. I mean, Kyle Larson led initially, then his car started to fade. Chase Elliott came back up and had his chance. Hamlin didn't lead any laps, but then Truex was up there, and for a while we thought maybe this is Martin Truex's title, and wouldn't be wrong, because he had won Phoenix, remember, back in the spring, and had been very, very good on the 750 tracks compared to the Hendrick cars. And then, of course, Kyle Larson benefits from a short run there. So it was a pretty fair fight throughout that race, and I think one thing we talked about, the points system. Of course, the winner take all championship. I think for the credibility of it, for the series, at least the best driver this year actually won, compared to in years past where that may have not been the case. I mean, I think last year Harvick was definitely the best driver. Hamlin was second best driver, and neither of them ended up winning the title. And then, of course, Hamlin was the only one that made it to the championship for it, but then Chase Elliott ended up being the champion last year, and now this year another Hendrick car wins, but at least it was the best Hendrick car and the best driver overall this season in this playoffs, which I think if you were to poll people, it was probably a bunch of football fans that created the championship. format that we have, where at least if you were to survey people, it was people who wanted it to see this end up more like a football championship format or a basketball championship format. So at least for credibility, Kyle Larson wins. So a lot of things that happened this year, but he's the most dominant driver this year that we had.
And the whole redemption arc bit on a weekend where certain drivers were doing stuff to figure out ways to cancel themselves out of the Cup Series. Kyle Larson, going hard R and all that didn't matter in the end because he got out of the Cup Series and started winning every dirt race he ran. Then it gave a free rein to Hendrick to go and get the guy he wanted. Tony tried, and Ford put the kibosh on it. When a billionaire or multimillionaire can fund you and spend $30 million plus $50 million, whatever the hell it costs to run a Cup team anymore, but basically run them out of pocket, and you're free rolling with a guy who's that talented. You give him the kind of equipment that Hendrick was able to give him this year, Cliff Daniels, all these different things. He puts it together. We will see what the Gen 7 will bring for Kyle Larson, Cliff Daniels and company, and how that will suit him and his driving style. Relative to some of the other drivers, you would think the Ford contingent, after not getting any drivers into the Final Four and having a pretty crappy year in general, they're going to want to show up here next year in a bigger way. And Toyota, they have an age. They definitely have a lack of cars problem, but they also have an age problem because only Christopher Bell, and to a lesser extent Bubba Wallace, of course, but Bell and Wallace are younger, and the rest of the guys are veterans. Kyle Busch is looking at starting to go and tail to the other side. Hamlin's in his 40s, Truex 40s. I think Ty Gibbs is there, but who else is going to be there? You need at least 3 guys right now to go and plus they need more cars out there. And you wonder with the way charters are and the way things are, how that's all going to land out. Kurt Busch, of course, is going to be in another 2311 car that doesn't have a charter at the moment, but he's an older guy, so that's another ride. I figure maybe John Hunter Nemechek will be a part of that discussion, but even with what happened to him last weekend, it was a weekend of last races and whatever. It was the last race for Brad Keselowski, as I mentioned, at Penske after all these years. Started there in 2010, moved from Junior Motorsports, went there in 2010, had a pretty rough year, but in 2011 took over the Miller Lite 2 car from Kurt Busch, who ended up swapping over to the 22 Shell Pennzoil Dodge. And Brad started a great relationship with Miller Lite. Finished third in points in 2011, had a breakout season, won at Kansas and he broke his leg and then at Road Atlanta and then won at Pocono, which was pretty epic. And then, he had a pretty dang good year. He won the Xfinity title in 2010. I think it was Nationwide Series back then, but or might have been Busch Series. One of those. It was a Busch or Nationwide, one of them. And then, so first NASCAR title for Penske. Then in 2012, he won Penske's first Cup title. Won Penske the Brickyard 400 for the first time, won the Southern 500 for Penske for the first time since Bobby Allison did it, and the AMC Javelin back in the 70s. Never got the Daytona 500, unfortunately. Joey Logano was able to do that. Got the 600 last year, and he got a bunch of majors, won over 30 races for Penske Racing, did a lot of firsts in NASCAR, a big part of what Penske Racing is in NASCAR competition as he moves to be a co-owner of what is has been Roush Fenway Racing, Roush Racing, then Roush Fenway, to take over the 6 car from Ryan Newman, who in his last race, more than likely in Cup, finished 23rd. And I'm just trying to go look through here. Ganassi, of course, in their last Cup race. Ross Chastain finished 14th. Kurt Busch finished 16th. The 21's going to have an actual driver and not a January 6ther. And so, yeah, I'm not even going to go any further with that. Going over here. Prix, the last race for the 37. JTG Doherty camp, they finished 20th because Richard was on a mission between him and Corey LaJoie. I think they were trying to wreck everybody in the field. They wrecked Bubba Wallace 7 laps into the race, or 5 laps into the race, which was ridiculous, because they're both morons. Quinn Huff, thankfully, that's the end of Quinn Huff's Cup Series career, along with the whatever the hell their team name is. Oh God, why am I forgetting the name of that?
Starcom Racing.
Starcom Racing is done, making their crappy race cars, showing up and doing nothing. Timmy Hill starting park, that's convenient. Kyle Busch, I think, ran into and ran over Chase Briscoe, helped him.
Chase had a flat tire.
Yeah, he also, I mean, I think he probably doored him too, but whatever. It's Gibbs for you. He's still the Sunoco Rookie of the Year, no matter how much people want to shit on him. Denny Hamlin's stupid fans or Kyle Busch's fans. Chase Briscoe is Rookie of the Year after a brutal baptism to the Cup Series. I wish they would have moved up his Xfinity crew chief with him instead of having Klossmeyer. What is it? Anthony Alfredo got let go today. We're doing this on Wednesday night. Anthony Alfredo was let go.
And he wrecked a lot of race cars.
He wrecked a lot of race cars, but then it's a 38 at Front Row Motorsports. I mean, John Hunter wrecked a lot of race cars and almost won a championship, which we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. Bunch of Rick Ware crap. Justin Haley's moving up. We don't know if McDowell's going to have a job. Eric Jones was at Jerry Baxter's last race with the 43 team. Since they've hired a new crew chief. We'll talk about that a little bit. But yeah, there was a lot of lasts, a lot of first, whatever. But Brad, I think the big one is Brad, though. What Brad meant to Penske's NASCAR deal. People can say whatever they want to say about him, but in the end, his contributions to a team, Roger Penske's won everything in motorsport. He's one of the most, powerful people in sport. And, he owns the Speedway now. The Speedway that he owned for many decades as an owner and a competitor, he owns now. Every car manufacturer wanted him to run them. This guy, he doesn't hire LCD, the worst of the worst, other than like Paul Tracy. But, Brad Keselowski did a lot. Rusty Wallace set the tone in the 2 car for all those years. And Kurt did his part for a while, but Brad carried that 2 car, and won a lot. And it's not just my personal, fandom, which kind of gone down a little bit over these last couple of years as I've become more of a Chase Briscoe guy to look towards the future. But Brad's done a lot of winning. And, when you have this kind of move, it feels a lot like Tony's move from the 20 car to become an owner. And we saw how it worked out there. He had a good run for about 3.5 years as a car owner and driver. Maybe Brad's line is he's going to go and have another run, might go and take off a bunch of wins and ride this out in the sunset, get another title and make him. He's got Hall of Fame credentials, to be fair, but if he runs a similar line as what Tony did, he's definitely a Hall of Fame guy. But he did a lot for Penske Racing and NASCAR. Brought Joey Logano along, he helped Penske and was like, hey, let's bring him in. And they've set their future up with Joey Logano. He went and had Ryan Blaney in his truck, the Xfinity Series champion that we're going to talk about. drove one of his trucks. A guy that's so now there's 3 guys. I mean, there's been multiple Xfinity champions now that have driven for Brad Keselowski.
And Cindric, too.
And Cindric. So, I mean, Cindric, who's going to take over Brad's ride. I mean, granted, his dad runs the team, but Cindric has become a legitimate force. His old style of running into people might pay more in this day and age of NASCAR. But he deserves to be in that car. I wouldn't have said that a year and a half ago, but he does now. And if the pressure of being in that car, I think he'll be able to handle it pretty well. And he brought along Cindric, he brought along Blaney, Hemric, Reddick. There's a lot that he's brought to the sport, and he's not even done. But it's a pretty interesting time. End of an era for sure. You've gotten used to certain things. You get used to certain people driving certain cars. It's like you had Junior with the 8 car, but he ended up getting the 88. Well, it's going to be weird seeing Brad driving the 6 car next year after all these years of whoever the hell else has been driving the 6 car. I mean, it's Mark Martin's car. So to be fair, he's taken over a car that was driven by Rusty Wallace, who's a Hall of Famer. Kurt Busch more than likely to be an Hall of Fame. And he's going to take over a car that Mark Martin made
has
famous
lineage
too.
to Mark Martin. Yeah. I mean, I think, for Brad, you talk about his Penske, like his success at Penske. I mean, look at before he came to Penske and how they were doing. I mean, Kurt was doing somewhat well, but he was like kind of a boomer bust driver at that time. Right. That was when he had a lot of his outbursts and everything. The 12 car, when it was known back then, didn't really have anything. Newman wasn't really good anymore. They had David Stremme for a year, but then Brad came along and then got in the 2 car. He struggled a year in the 12 car, but then got into the 2 car when they changed numbers and changed sponsors and everything. And Brad had that one win. Remember, I mean, at Kansas outlasted Dale Jr. on fuel mileage, and then after that, he was able to have a lot of success, especially after he broke his ankle and that test at Road Atlanta, and then had just went up and had a lot of wins there in 2011. Of course, won the 2012 title, and then it was also a time when he became culturally relevant because remember he brought NASCAR to Twitter. Remember he had that fire tweet when Juan Pablo ran into the jet dryer there in turn 3. Yep.
Oh God, all LCD fans, holy shit! We set off NASCAR Twitter. Juan Pablo Montoya, that's all he did in NASCAR. He went and hit a fucking jet dryer. We don't even know what the hell else he's ever done in his life. He hit a dang jet dryer. It don't matter that his crew chief went and let him out there with a broken rear end and all that because Chad Johnson's an idiot and a fucking moron. He was so bad that Tony Stewart wanted to murder him. Well,
I think that was Chris Heroy at that time, but whatever.
May have been Chris Heroy. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just like to denigrate Chad Johnson because he's terrible.
But
my God, that dang Juan Pablo Montoya had no business driving out there hitting that dang jet dryer. It's like, hey, motherfucker, the guy's won 2 Indianapolis 500s. He's won the Monaco Grand Prix. He was winning races in early 90s, driving against the likes of Dale Jr. download guest Jerry Nadeau in the Barber Saab Championship. How many people would know that? People like me know that because I watched it back then. Marty Reed was announcing that when Marty Reed didn't suck at life. And he wasn't Juan Pablo Montoya. We're going to make this. We got AJ Foyt reference about Juan Pablo Montoya. He's like Robin Miller, God bless his soul. He won the 3rd quarter NMPA Pocono Spirit Award and probably is going to win the award at the end of the year. But he went and said, how about, what did you think of Montoya? Well, that Montoya, he's pretty good. All right,
I set you off there. No, but I mean, like that whole thing when he tweeted that was a big thing. That was like basically, one of the first, viral NASCAR related tweets that we had, back in when Twitter was still kind of a new thing.
He outran Junebug to the urinal too. To the
no, Junior won that.
Oh,
okay.
Wait,
no,
I forgot. Okay, fine, he won that, but Brad went viral that night, so it's
exactly. No, but that was that was that part too. And then, Brad's kind of been the contrarian figure in the sport, I mean, say what you want about him, about his opinions, but always kind of having the opposing opinion in the garage, a lot of times trying to be kind of the voice of reason, but also he's been, a lot of wins and brought a lot of success to Penske after kind of after Rusty Wallace. He had his years in the 90s and then kind of fell off in the 2000s before retiring. Brad kind of brought back that level of success, and then he brought in Joey Logano, and then they had their years, probably 2013 or 2014 to 2018. I think that was like the era that Penske was really good. Basically the 750, 800 horsepower, 900 horsepower era in NASCAR with the Gen 6, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but brought that level of success and everything. So just
two
a lot of
championship
things.
opportunities lost there.
Yeah.
That time.
Yeah. Well, 2014. Yeah. Brad Keselowski should have probably been one of the title. I mean, actually it was Jeff Gordon's title. But 2014, it was there for the taking. I mean, that was, Brad was the guy that people hated. Remember, Tony hated him, thought he had a death wish at Texas in 2012. 2 years later, Kevin Harvick pushes him into Jeff Gordon on pit road, and they get into a fight.
And ends up winning the title in the process because he went and took out both Brad and Jeff and all that whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And what was it? 2015. Well,
2016 was the other one. Yeah, Logano was 15, and he got ended by Matt Kenseth, who ended his career. And then 2016 was the other one where he probably should have had a chance and win a championship, and that went away and went in smoke. And Joey Logano and Carl Edwards wrecked each other, which allowed Jim Johnson to get his 7th championship.
No, yeah, Brad Keselowski, he had, so after 2012, when you beat out Jimmy Johnson for that title, after that, it was all a bunch of near misses or close but not good enough for Keselowski. So, one thing I'm trying to say here is, going to Roush Racing, they haven't been really good at all. And I mean, he's bringing in Matt McCall, who's really good crew chief from the one car. I mean, I'm going to assume that they're bringing in Jeff Gordon calls him Jazzy. He's the car chief or whatever on the one car. He was on the 78 car, and I think he's probably like one of the he made the 78 car really good. And then the one car, even though it's not quite as good, I think he's been the guy that's made it helped make it more competitive than what it is. I think maybe I'm going to assume he's going to go there. They said half the team's going, right?
Yeah,
from 1 to 6.
Yeah, so, I'm looking it up just to go and confirm here. Just give me a second here. I'll bring it up, but you can keep going.
Yeah. I mean, with Brad Keselowski buying the team, well, the one thing you talk about with Tony Stewart is Tony. They were buying into Haas, which wasn't good. They had Hendrick's support for that car or for that team, so it's not like it was like going to buy into a back end team and try to bring it up. And Roush, not really back end team, but they haven't really had a whole lot of success. So you wonder, when's the next race or when's the next time Keselowski is going to win? Because they weren't really good overall this year. They won Talladega, but that was it. And you have to wonder if 2012 is going to end up being the only championship he won or that he wins in NASCAR. And then, I think at least for next season, really hard to see when's the next race Brad Keselowski is going to win. Talladega might be his, spring Talladega this year might be his last victory in the Cup Series for maybe a year. We'll see. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think because of how they've run on super speedways and knowing Brad's ability on super speedways, I don't fear that he can't win anymore. I think Talladega and Daytona are always going to be wide open for him. That he's gunning for the 500. Mark Martin never won it. Roush only has the 2 with Matt Kenseth. And that was for years a bugaboo track for them in general. They couldn't win Daytona for their lives. They couldn't win the 500. It was always tough, the super speedway races. Jeff Burton won the Coke Zero 400 in 2000. Talladega was brutal for a while. I think Mark Martin won a caution-free race. but it wasn't something that they were known for doing. But Roush has become a thing where they run really well there because they know that's where they can be competitive. And I mean, oh wow, that is scary. First, yeah. Well, that's yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to find the Brad Keselowski thing here, and because well, that's Brad Keselowski. So Brad Keselowski, the dawn of new era. Yeah, talking yesterday, he appeared at a lunch and with One-Eyed Jack and whoever. So that's, you got some Spanish, whatever. Blah, blah, blah. I swear, yeah. So yeah, we got Matt McCall. I read that I swear it was on J-Ski earlier, or it was somewhere. I mean, it could be here on. They got Eric Jones. Blah blah blah. I'm trying to find this. I literally read something where they're gonna get a bunch of guys. It was on my timeline, I swear. And I wasn't seeing things either. I know there was on a timeline. I probably liked it too. So there you go. I just helped myself on that. Yeah, I retweeted that. Wanted to well, while I'm trying to find this, we want to send our condolences to the family of Delma Cowart, a former journeyman driver, ran in the Cup Series and ARCA and other whatever, probably in the Busch Series. And his time, he always said that he may have never won a race, but he always won every party. And he made the 500 one or two times. And he was a gentleman and he was a good man. And unfortunately, he met his time, whatever. But he's in a better place now, and I think he's going to be able to win a lot of races up there. And even if he ain't going to win a lot of races, he's going to win a lot of parties up there. Pockris announced it. There you go. Thank you, Bob Pockris. Credit to him. TJ Majors will spot. Matt McCall will bring Nick Case. Engineers Jonathan Branzell and Josh Sell. Mechanics Jonathan Ellis and Matthew House from Ganassi. Tire changers Steve Price, who was part of that Ganassi #1 crew, and Johnny Roberts from what the hell's his name, the 24 car, Byron. So a bunch of the 1 crew is going to be coming over to the 6, and Brad will get to bring TJ, who was Dale Jr.'s guy. So Dale Jr. continues the whole Dale Jr. connection with TJ Majors will move over to the number 6 car, the RFK number 6 car. So thanks, Bob. I finally don't feel bad about myself. I knew I saw that. So there you go.
Yeah, I made a mistake there. I said Jazzy. He used to be the lead engineer on the 78 car and the 1 car, and now he's the lead engineer on the 19 with Truex. So I thought he was still on the 1.
Okay, yeah, because so Jazzy's over there, and then the car chief Blake Harris is the one that banked out Caitlin Vinci. So he's got a really good team, I'll tell you. And then of course you got James Small, who said that somebody licked his dick during the race too. So now that shirt's out there. So you gotta have. I'll tell you. Martin Truex only has that 1 title, and he's had this great run. But his leadership team he's got one interesting dynamic. You got James Small, who says funny crap intentionally, unintentionally, curses a lot, and he has an Aussie accent, so people like that. Well, it's funny. And then you have Blake Harris, who gets suspended whenever they pass and don't pass inspection. He gets suspended and he gets sent out of the racetrack, so he gets to go home to his smoking hot wife. And then who works on Fox Sports. And then you have Jazzy, who's one of the best car chiefs in the business. Yeah, I mean, if there was still front row or furniture row racing, I think he might have won another title by now. But Joe Gibbs decided he wanted to kill the team. So we got that. No neck, the end of a run more than likely, unless front row is going to hire him for the 34, which if he wants to run in the back, that's his choice. I think Front Row Motorsports, if they sign No Neck and they sign Todd Gilliland, it seems like, I'm just spitballing it. Todd Gilliland, they don't know what they're going to do with the Truck Series effort, which was connected to David Gilliland's team. Now, Todd Gilliland had a good year, had some bad luck in the playoff. To be fair, I think Todd Gilliland, that makes sense that they would go and put him in the 38 car. That's always a car they go and take dice rolls with here in recent years. I think the potential and ability is there. And, at this point, Front Row Motorsports thought they were going to sell out to 2311. Now that they're not going to do that, you get a veteran presence like Ryan Newman, who can go and then try to get to his next stage of his career where he's kind of running a team and building something, and who knows where that'll take it. And then you have Todd Gilliland, who's a young gun. It would be something that would actually work for that team. It makes too much sense, though. Even though Newman's washed up, to be fair, his last really decent year was 14, where he could have basically put gasoline on this format and lit it on a blaze if he had won the championship after, I don't know how many other guys would have been more worthy of it if he had beaten Kevin Harvick at Homestead that year. But and he used up Kyle Larson, so there's that whole connection.
Yeah, at Phoenix.
Yeah, at Phoenix to make it in the Final Four. The Gen 6, yeah, so interesting run. The Gen 5 was generally vilified because of the wing and all the other things. What do you call the COT? They made the Gen 6 look more like the real car. The ARCA cars are still kind of like the Gen 6, even though there's no Chevy SS anymore. The Fusion in that format doesn't run anymore. They ran the Gen 6 cars, then they started messing with horsepower. They put the big ass spoiler on it. They'd have a little itty spoiler. They never really came up with a package that was totally suitable. Hendrick Motorsports over the last, year plus figured out a way, I think with the no practice, kind of played in their hands with COVID time. But now you're going to have practice again. I think qualifying is going to happen again every race. So, the Gen 6 time, it had its purpose. I think it kind of led to where we're going with Gen 7 in certain ways. The cars aesthetically were more pleasing, of course, relative to Gen 5, which, of course, wasn't. It was a kit piece in a sense. It was sticker car. Every car was the same, but it was stickers. Now then they had more shape towards what the car was. Now we're getting a Gen 7, which is more like what we have on the street per se. Good, bad, and indifferent. I think you look at the Gen 6 car, Jimmy only won those 2 championships. There was a lot of parity in regards to championships. Kyle Busch won 2 championships with the Gen 6. Outside of that, a bunch of first-time champions in there, starting in 2013 with Jimmy's, what ended up being Jimmy's 6th title, beating, I'm trying to remember who he beat. I think he beat Kenseth that year in 2013.
And Dale Jr. and Kyle Busch for that championship.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But, Gen 6 was, it played its role in the sport and moved it forward in certain ways, even though the current leadership structure kind of tried to bring it backwards into the LCD.
Yeah, with the Gen 6, I think the thing to think about the Gen 6 is rule changes. It started out with 8 inches of spoiler in the Gen 6 car, and they had 850 horsepower, and then horsepower naturally increased to 900, and they put in another inch of spoiler. And the racing, 2013 wasn't that great when it started out. Remember Daytona, they crashed a lot, but then the race itself was basically Matt Kenseth dominated 2013 Daytona 500 blue engine, and then nothing happened in that race until Keselowski and Jimmy got side by side for the lead for 20 laps or 10 laps, whatever. And then Denny Hamlin, the second race, didn't like how it drove and then called him out on Twitter, and then they tried to fine him and all that stuff and put it on probation, whatever.
Miss Hummer actually qualified on pole for that, or the Daytona 500.
Yeah, but
And
that was bound to happen though.
yeah. Well, yeah, that was a fix. But she ran up front the whole entire, more or less up front for her, the entire day, which tells you how bad the racing was that day. But you can go ahead.
No, yeah, 20, yeah, and then there was basically they had a lot of stuff with rule changes and stuff throughout that era, and 2014 they increased spoiler that year, and then the racing I think it was pretty good that year, to be honest. That was probably the perfect package. I think a lot of people on the internet will say that 2014's package is probably the best racing that they had, but still, there was still some things that you didn't like. There was still like issues with the aero and stuff, with aero push and all that. And then 2015, that's when they went to 750, and then they decreased the spoiler, I think, down to 7 inches, and then they started experimenting with the rules package mid-season. Remember, they cut the spoiler at Kentucky, and then they went and brought the big spoiler package at Indianapolis and Michigan, and then they brought it back to the low downforce for Darlington. And they went to low downforce 2016, 17, and 18, and then they went and brought back the high downforce, low horsepower in 2019 and to present. Of course, now the short tracks now and the road courses and the mile tracks all have low downforce, so kind of brought back in balance for this. So not every race is 550 or 750 with high spoiler. So at least there's some variance, but I think now it kind of influenced the next package. Maybe the next car will race better with the same downforce horsepower configuration and stuff that happens internally. So Gen 6 or Gen 7 car, with the independent rear suspension, the sequential shifting and all that stuff, it sounds like it's going to drive a whole lot different than what we currently have. So maybe it might race better despite having the same specs as far as downforce and horsepower. We'll see what happens. And then, of course, with the Gen 6, you had the downforce. They changed the rules, and a lot of people focusing on this. And even though that in the 2000s, mid 2000s, they had a lot of spoiler changes as well and valence changes. That because if you look back to the early 2000s, spoilers were a lot bigger through 2003, and then I think Rusty Wallace complained about it, and then they went to a hard tire, soft tire, and shorter spoiler 2004, 05, 06, and 07. If you look at the pictures, the spoiler on there was a lot shorter. And the racing was all great through those days, and then COD came.
But they had the lobster. They had those. What did they
Twisted
call those?
Sister.
The Twisted Sister I called them lobster cars because they did not look anything like a regular car.
Yeah,
that was 2002 was the last year, I think, of what I guess you would say was like the Gen 3 era, and then that Gen 4 era was from 2003 till when they came up with the COT.
Yeah. I think the official graphic when they started labeling with Gen whatever is 1992 to 2006 is Gen 4, but it doesn't really matter because they had several iterations, so it wasn't really fair to start calling it a Gen 5 or Gen 4 or whatever. And now it's all standardized, so whatever gen it was until 2008, and then COT, and now Gen 6, and now next gen car. So this thing was marred by rule changes and a lot of focus on social media. Of course, the press focused it on a lot, the fans focused it on a lot, and definitely a lot of people have sides on which package should you go with, and some of the package doesn't work, some of it works. So a lot of focus is on that. And the one thing that this package currently have that has now raced his last race on Sunday is that there wasn't really a lot of mechanical grip in that car. If you look at the suspension travel, I remember a race back in 2014 with Keselowski was leading at Kentucky, and they had the camera on the right front or right rear tire showing the suspension travel, and Wally Dallenbach was basically saying that it was like a go-kart now, the suspension travel. There was not a whole lot of travel, and that I mean, of course they got rid of the ride height in 2014, but the amount of travel that you had, now it really put a lot of focus into the aero and the horsepower, because with low downforce, or with it, regardless of any downforce, if you lose the downforce in the corner, you have to be able to recover with mechanical grip, I guess. I mean, that's my understanding. I'm not a mechanical engineer, I'm electrical computer engineer, but my understanding is, you can still recover with mechanical grip some of that. But now when you have less of that, and then you also take away the aero grip, that leads to the huge aero loss that we've seen with this racing with the Gen 6 car.
Yeah, and you think about coil binding, they were talking about coil binding during the Gen 4 era they started doing it in Gen 4 era, because I can remember Andy Petrie talk about it. And then in Gen 5 with the COT, they started going and twisting. They started turning the cars basically into a 75-degree angle. I mean, I always remember Sam Horner's
Yeah, the yaw.
The yaw, as Miss Hummer heard Tony Uri Jr. say. But, that they went and started doing that. Then you had the coil binding. So they sealed these things off. You look at Jeff Gordon, it's funny how Jeff Gordon, who's now getting fat and old and getting gray hair, back in his day when he had a mullet and a mustache, how much air you had lift off the ground on the front end. And Ray Evernham, with all the inbreeding and all the shit he's done, thinking about what he had when he worked on them IROC cars, what he worked on with Jeff's, Fords, then Jeff's Chevys. They had so much air under the nose for I don't know how many years. For the whole entire peak of Jeff's career, which was basically from 95 through 01, when he was his dominance, Jeff Gordon. The cars all were off the ground. Like the front end was off the ground. You had air up off the back. Now these things are slammed on the ground like it's almost like an open wheel car. And you made the mention about the go-karts. You have them things sealed off. I mean, what are you going to do? I'm no air. And the point is, you're an engineer. I am no science guy. I'm just strictly, not like lay motorsports. I just like things going fast. I don't give a fuck how the hell you do it. I want it to be fast. I want it to be cool. I want it to look cool. When they're all driving around at like 180 miles an hour following each other, I do that. It's the same way as Tony said about Indianapolis when he said to, what's his name, Bob Kravitz, who's the Indianapolis Star columnist and Indianapolis Colts beat writer. It's like we could go,
on the freeway
do racing. Yeah, we could go on the 405 or like 495 or whatever the fuck, 485. We could go and do all the passing you want on the 485. This is racing. But the problem, and as a Tony Stewart fan, as a mark, stock cars at Indianapolis, you look at the 94 Brickyard 400 and you look at the last oval Brickyard 400, it's night and day. You could actually pass in the Brickyard 400 in 1994. The pole speed by Rick Mast was like 172 miles an hour in 1994 at the Brickyard 400. And they had like 800 cars that showed up for that race. The last oval race they only had like 40. And I think the pole was like 180 miles an hour. But the difference was all the cars were sealed off to the ground. They had a 17-inch spoiler on it, and they had so much aero wash that they couldn't do anything with it.
Yeah.
But then you also you can start getting into the whole tire difference between the Hoosier, Goodyear, the tire battle. They blamed Hoosier for all the issues when Goodyear can't make a good tire, and they still don't make a good tire. And maybe that's part of it. And nobody wants to say anything because they pay a shit ton of money to NASCAR to be the official tire of NASCAR.
Yeah, Tony was the only one to say anything about it.
Well, yeah. And Tony, I mean, they put Goodyear tires on the SRX cars, but I wonder if that was a Tony thing or if that's a Ray and, the whatever group, I forget, the Montag group that was like, hey, because personally I thought they were going to run Hoosiers, but I don't know if Hoosier has a mold anymore. For a stock car, maybe that's a thing. But General tires exist, so I'm like, why wouldn't you just run a General tire? They run those crappy General tires in ARCA. I think, I don't know, maybe they changed that now because now they're under NASCAR's deal. But yeah, I mean, Gen 6 is done. ARCA's going to still drive around with those Gen 6 cars, even though they've been way out of date. They probably should change to a late model body, and they'd probably do better. Yeah, let's get into Xfinity Series, man. Daniel, that was the one thing I took away from this weekend that made me happy. I didn't really give a fuck about Friday, and we kind of predicted it on the show. I brought out my, I'm going to go and put myself on a high horse. I kind of predicted the John Hunter Nemechek choke on this show last week, and it happened, albeit it wasn't, like, to be fair, it wasn't really like all his fault, but I kind of felt like the John Hunter Nemechek choke was going to happen, and it did. But Austin Cindric got used up by AJ Allmendinger for the regular season title, got moved by Daniel Hemric on the last lap, last turn, to go and win the Xfinity Series title, get his first career Xfinity win, first win in NASCAR's top 3 series. Former Brad Keselowski racing driver. Made me so happy. Did a full-on backflip. He did better than Carl Edwards because he went on top of the roof and did it. That car, that diecast, I pre-ordered it. I'm not going to see it until next November, probably, when I hope he's a 2-time Xfinity Series champion with Colleague, and then Colleague goes and moves him up to drive a Cup car because Richard Childress fucked him over. I mean, in the end, Cindric was the best driver this year, along with AJ Allmendinger. AJ Allmendinger had nothing on Saturday. Cindric had a car. He had the dominant car. Cautions, probably the same way as Truex probably feels aggrieved by what happened to him. And I think Austin Cindric, you think about guys moving up with 2 championships. What's it called? Why am I forgetting his name now? Driver of the 8 car in Cup.
Tyler Reddick.
Tyler Reddick had 2 consecutive championships. Junebug. There's other guys. Truex. And I mean, you want to have that, but then when you consider what Austin Cindric has done, we talked about it in the Brad part, where Cindric has kind of built himself up to where it's not just that his dad runs Penske Racing as the competition director. Austin Cindric earned his right to drive the flagship car at Penske Racing, and he handled himself with class. He wasn't happy, and the guy looks like Gumby, and his freaking pit sign is like of a giraffe, which is funny. And the fact that it's like the guy handled himself with class at Bristol, he handled himself with class at Phoenix. But fucking Daniel Hemric, bro, freaking elbows up. He's a young gun. Elbows up. It's one of my favorite things from that Blaney and Bubba ride from Las Vegas to LA that they don't have on, and those they cut the clip. I don't know where that clip went. They went through so many drivers, and Blaney did Daniel Hemric, and they never have Daniel Hemric on camera. I want to see that, where he's driving around elbows up. And
it's
it might
be a weird way to drive.
I mean, I don't know, but it's a total goof. It might have been a put on. I want to see it, because if he drives anything like that and he can win a fucking championship, God bless him. He won $1 million. He won $100,000 driving a legend car. He gets to make kids with Kenzie Ruston for the rest of his life. And Ren got to sit there in her little onesie and celebrate with mom and dad with that championship. I mean, Kenzie got canceled because she was with Ben Kennedy, and Ben Kennedy couldn't take the fact that he got beat by a better driver for if he had married her, who knows what would happen. But instead, now he's just making crappy schedules. Daniel Hemric's now NASCAR champion. That made me happy. I'm sorry. I'm a Daniel Hemric guy. I wore the Daniel Hemric shirt on Monday. I bowled near 190. Didn't matter for me. But fucking Daniel Hemric won that race, and that was pretty cool. I mean, he won the best driver this year. It kind of makes the whole championship process not look so great. he took a dive. He basically copped to taking the dive the week before to give it to fucking, Gagson, because he's like, we got a better purpose here this week. And he came through. People said he can't come through. He's not a closer. He's a choker. 10 second place finishes. Well, I'll tell you what. He's got the smoking hot wife that can drive a race car really fast. He's also got the hardware that he's going to be taking to College Racing next year to drive with AJ Allmendinger, who was one of the best drivers this year in the Xfinity Series. And they got a really tough duo. And I'm sure he's going to be driving a Cup car limited races next year, since AJ is going to be splitting that ride. They're going to run 2 charters, so I figure Daniel Hemric's going to get some Cup races too. But What do you think of the Xfinity race on Saturday, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty good race to watch. I mean, initially, John Hunter had the lead there to start out with qualifying on pole, and Cindric had the lead too. And I think the race ended up becoming between Cindric. He had a lot of pace, and Hemric, who was also pretty good there on long green flag runs. As far as the other 2 guys, Gragson was kind of there on restarts. There's that one restart where he made up like 4 or 5 spots or whatever, coming from like 11th up to like 5th or something like that. And then Allmendinger was never really there. He was kind of a non-factor throughout the race. I mean, there was a couple of times where he kind of got up into the top 10, but then ultimately he just didn't have a whole lot of pace to be able to get up any further than that and really show any real speed to go out and win the championship. But this race came down to Cindric and Hemric kind of just trying to beat each other on restarts, and wasn't sure it was going to happen for Hemric, but then backstretch on the last lap, come down to it, turn 3, he just sent it in there just enough to get to his left rear bumper, and then moved him out of the way to get the win for the title. And I mean, I was happy for him too. I kind of wanted to see him win just because his whole story, you go back to 2014, 2013 when he started racing in the trucks, and I remember Matt Weaver's been a big supporter of him for years, advocate for him. But I remember Weaver talking about Hemric's talent on the super late models and winning all those super late models at 5 Flags. What do they call it? The Southern Super Series or whatever it was known back then. And all those late model races. They won the All-American 400 in like 2015 at Nashville. So he's just had a lot of success on those levels. And I mean, again, like with this title, I mean, he probably didn't deserve to win the title based on, full season points, but at least it was someone who everybody could like, and the fact that he hadn't won yet. I mean, when somebody gets their first win, generally, you're pretty happy for their success, and then he also wins the title. So it's pretty wholesome there, and brings back the backflip celebration to NASCAR after Carl Edwards retired. Somebody from Kannapolis winning in NASCAR a title again.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
At Kannapolis, I mean, you can tell they're from the same region just from how they talk. They both have kind of like the same intonation, speech patterns, tone of voice, kind of thing there with Dale Jr. and Hemric. So it was all very likable. Cindric, like you said, he handled the loss very well. I mean, he had Dave Burns kind of pressing him to get a reaction, but he was still able to give. I mean, he was still pissed about it, but he was able to give kind of a classy response to that. So it was a pretty good race there. I mean, there was a lot of cautions, which we all expected to happen throughout the series or throughout the race. I mean, it happened in Cup, didn't really happen in Truck, but his Cup was kind of came down to restarts as well, and this one really came down to restarts and a lot of wrecks in the last 20 laps that we saw. But then eventually Hemric was able to get the win, so it was a very good, very likable race overall. But 2021 season ending, and now Hemric is the champion.
Yeah, and he's going to be moving over to another team. It's got the same kind of feeling of Tyler Reddick. Thanks for the pickup on that, of course. I mean, will he be able to repeat? Can he repeat driving that 11 car? Justin Haley moving up full-time to drive in the Cup Series. We don't know what number he's going to be driving. More than likely it's 16 because they already have that. But I'm trying to think of what numbers are open. But they need 2. And can Daniel Hemric go out there and win Daytona, start next year and have 2 consecutive wins and lock himself into the playoffs right then and there? Him and AJ Allmendinger could do destruction because Ford's not going to really have a true presence in the Xfinity Series. Ryan Sieg, God bless them. They're not a big team. Chevy's going to have a big presence next year, of course, not only with Colleague, RCR. Sheldon Creed ran the 78 car for BJ McLeod and finished 10th. And I mean, he qualified well too. And so I figure he's going to be up there. You got Ty Gibbs, didn't even run this race, and he'll be up there. You got some of these other guys who will be able to show up and do things. I mean, you look at Hemric's will be back next year, but Cindric Burton's going to be running for Rookie of the Year in the Cup Series. What's going to happen with Herbst in the Stewart-Haas deal. Haley's going to the Cup Series. We're going to talk about the guy who finished 6th. He qualified on the front row and led 39 laps. I mean, Cindric and Hemric led most of the laps, over 150 laps of the race. 3 guys really dominated. Bruckshot will be back because his dad's got money. That January 6th, you get Justin Allgaier, Sheldon Creed, your top 10. Mike Lynette ran his last race. 3 consecutive junior motorsports cars, 11th, 12th, and 13th. And you have AJ Allmendinger 14th. Jeremy Clements just came out. And it's on J-Ski saying that he has full sponsorship for the whole year. So God bless him. I feel bad for the guy who finished in 20th, who's being dragged down by DLCD after he won his first career race at Talladega. It's a shame because he's actually worked hard to get there. And now, because of segments of the population, he can't even get anybody to sponsor him. So hopefully he'll be able to make it through. We'll see what happens with that. Xfinity Series will be interesting next year. The Ty Gibbs versus Sam Mayer battle. The colleague with Hemric and Allmendinger. Junior Motorsports, you'll have Josh Berry running full-time next year, along with what they already have there in Mayer Gagson. I forget who else will be running full-time for them. Sheldon Creed and Austin Hill will be running full-time for RCR. You have the Myatt Snyder will be moving over to drive for Jordan Anderson full-time to RCR. I mean, I think RCR is connected to the colleague deal. I'm not so sure I'm not sure what their whole logistics, if their colleague has Hendrick engines and then RCR like chassis and bodies. I don't know what it is, but there's like a whole Chevy thing that goes on over there. But we'll see what happens with that. Moving to the trucks, Chandler Smith, second win in 5 races for him in the playoff after getting eliminated early in the playoff. But the champion was Ben Rhodes, who his post-race presser might have shown that he's never drank in his life. Anything. I mean, any alcoholic beverage, because it didn't seem like he was fully there. I'm all for drunken press conferences. Dave Despain's interview with Brad Keselowski after he won his Cup championship might have been one of the greatest things that's ever been shown on TV. Roger Penske being able to handle the fact that his driver won the championship and he was drunk off his ass and they were having to do a presser together shows how great Roger Penske is. But Ben Rhodes being shit-faced and correcting the media in the current day. I think Ben Rhodes is going to be more famous for the fact that he did a drunken press conference and the fact that he backdoored a Truck Series championship after John Hunter Nemechek got knocked out of it 5 laps into the race, Josh. Pretty crazy to say that Ben Rhodes, after 6 years in the Truck Series, is now a champion, Truck Series champion, Thor Sport gets another title, and was it Chandler Smith for Kyle Busch gets another win and locks himself into a ride for next year, more than likely.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about his drunken interview there. I mean, I think he had a can of Bud Light there, and that's pretty weak sauce, man. Come on, but I think he
was
also had
drinking
some champagne.
I think he
Okay, yeah.
He did a shoey with Rich Lucius as crew chief. He gave Rich Lucius a shoey. I think he probably did a couple shoeys. Who can only imagine what the hell else they gave him? He weighs probably 125 pounds soaking wet, knowing him, but.
No, I mean that's probably me after like 5 shots of vodka. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's a lot
yeah.
of people after 5 shots of vodka. I'd probably be hurling after that many shots of vodka because I'm not a hard liquor drinker. But, if you tell me how many beers I can have, I can go pretty hard. But we're built differently that way. I mean, you're high society. You can handle the harder stuff. So
no,
okay.
well, I mean, yeah, I don't really drink that much. I mean, I don't even really drink that much at all. So, but I don't know. That's my feeling on that based on my own experience. But yeah, I mean, as far as the racing goes, yeah, Ben Rhodes kind of backed into it with this. Yeah, I mean, John Hunter probably should have won this title. I mean, this is the Truck Series is always kind of the weird one in this format. It's always kind of the one where the guy that you don't really expect to win wins, and the one that probably deserved it the most ends up getting the title. So it was definitely a different feeling here. And then, I mean, he had challenge from Zane Smith, but then you just ended up having the better car at the end. And then Zane Smith kind of faded in the last couple of laps. John Hunter basically spent the entire race trying to get back onto the lead lap and then making up that time to get up to Ben Rhodes. They just ran out of time, after having that flat tire and having to make a extra pit stop, unscheduled pit stop. So, just didn't have anything there because of that. I mean, he had the pace and he was flying through the field trying to get back up there, but just didn't have any opportunity because of the lost time there. And then Matt Crafton, I mean, he had, I guess, good qualifying speed, but certainly didn't have really anything in the actual race, and ended up finishing in 12th place. So it wasn't really a factor at all in that one. But, Chandler Smith gets his another win here in the Truck Series, and maybe building a case for himself next year. 2 wins this year, 6 top 5s, 9 top 10s there. There's another 69 there, but is able to at least make a case for himself going into next year. Maybe could be a contender in the 18 car going into next season. Maybe another teammate for John Hunter Nemechek to be able to push him into more success possibly, and help each of them get better in that series, and possibly move on up into the Xfinity Series in the future. So that should be interesting. And then Sheldon Creed led a lot of laps as well. Probably could have been a contender in this title as well, but didn't end up making it. So he had a lot of pace, and he ended up leading the most laps. Stuart Friesen finished second, which is a pretty good result for that team. They don't really have a lot of wins or anything like that in this series. So at least he's able to get that. So this one was definitely a weird one. Probably the most anticlimactic, I guess, finish. But hey, at least we got some content there with Ben Rhodes' drunken interview.
Yeah, that's really the takeaway. I mean, Sheldon Creed, if the nonsense that took place on Martinsville hadn't taken place, he would have been in it, and he might have gotten a repeat. He was one of the best drivers this year. To be completely honest, I think the two best drivers were John Hunter and Sheldon Creed, and neither of them are going to come home with the hardware. But Ben Rhodes was consistent. He was generally up there the whole season, and he, after 6 years of being in the Truck Series, finally goes and gets that championship. And you talked about Friesen and Chandler Smith, who I think will be up there in the Kyle Busch Motorsports combination with John Hunter and Chandler Smith will be formidable going into next year, because we really don't know who's going to be where outside of like Matt Crafton and a few other things. People that aren't exactly the most competitive. I mean, Lawless Allen got ran over early in the race. He's going to be driving the 45 for Nice. Dean Thompson, who finished 21st for Nice, is going to be around next year full time. And looking at whatever, the Tanner Gray ran over Lawless Allen. So that'll be an interesting battle between two guys that have daddies that are rich. Tanner Gray, who hit everything but the lottery, probably going to destroy a lot more equipment. Tate Fogelman, who won at Talladega, didn't have a good finish on Friday night. Or Taylor Gray. Taylor Gray sucks too. It doesn't matter. Both. I mean, Tanner Taylor, whatever. Tanner Gray was a pro stock champion a few years ago. Decided he has to go drive stock cars, and he's hit everything but the lottery. His brother ain't much better, so we'll see what happens with that. Haley Deegan, who NASCAR's YouTube channel, is following every post she puts up there, which is disturbing. Tracy, yeah. Who's going to be in the Hattori 16? Crafton, Sauter, just outside of the top 10. I mean, Eckes had a top 10 finish, one earlier during the playoffs. Maybe he goes to the Hattori truck. Maybe they get rid of Johnny Sauter finally and put somebody who's not a dick and has talent in that truck. But we'll get into all that. As we get into the off-season, maybe some of those announcements will come along, and we'll see who's going to go where. Roundup time here. The GSP roundup. We'll get into the WRC Bahrain 2 race, which saw Sebastian Buemi, Kazuki Nakajima, and Brendan Hartley win by 7.3 seconds over their Toyota teammates Mike Conway, Kobayashi, and Jose Maria Lopez. That's Bahrain 2. In the hypercar category, the Alpine finished third. LMP2, Robin Frijns, Ferdinand Habsburg, and Charles Malesi won. GT Pro, Alessandro Perguidi and James Colato beat the Porsche, in a Ferrari, beat the Porsche trio of Kevin Estre, Neil Yanni, Michael Christensen, and GTM. The team of Parado, Nielsen, and Alessandro Rivera in a Ferrari beat Christian Reed, Jackson Evans, Matt Campbell in the Proton Racing Porsche. And that's who stands out in regards to that. I'll go and reduce all that and go into that. Supercars at Sydney Motorsports Park again. Jamie Winchcup won the last race. So first race was Shane Van Gisbergen over Wincup and Davidson. Only one Ford in the top 5. 2, 3, 4. So those people outside of the top 5. The race 2 saw Anton De Pasquale for Penske, or for Dick Johnson Racing. Sorry, Freudians lived there. For Dick Johnson Racing, win over Shane Van Gisbergen and James Courtney. And then in the third race, mentioned Jamie Winchcup over Anton De Pasquale and Chaz Mostert in the final race. The standings here, Van Gisbergen's likely going to win a second championship. He's got over 350 points, like raw math there between Van Gisbergen and Jamie Winchcup in its last year as a driver. Davis in third, Mostert fourth, and Cam Waters in fifth. As we go to the next race there on the schedule at Sydney for another round there. I'm going to go and mess with that. MotoGP was at the Algarve, and Mir's year without MotoGP went difficult. Oh, yeah, it ain't that good. Danilo Petrucci is going to be running Dakar. Wow, that's something. Oh, Darren Binder. He is lost. The Algarve GP saw Pecco Bagnaia beat defending world champion Joan Mir and Bagnaya's teammate Jack Miller for the podium. Then you have Alex Marquez, Johan Zarco, Pol Espargaro, Jorge Martin, Alex Rins, Nea Bessaini, and Brad Binder in the top 10. Bertucci getting knocked off. Some of these other people are behind. In regards to Moto 2, the Moto 2 season, 2, Remy Gardner beat Raul Fernandez and Sam Lowe's, Aaron Canet and Cameron Beaubier in 5th. As we go and wait towards who needs support there. I'll move that. Trying to get some standings results.
You looking at the IMSA results?
Yeah. IMSA's the Petit Le Mans coming up here this weekend. Last race of their season. One of the majors here coming up. And a whole lot of action going on there at Road Atlanta. WeatherTech Racing's going to run another Porsche in the GT Pro, and it's going to be Kevin Estrie, Michael Christensen, and Frederick Makowicki. So all Porsche factory drivers, along with the usual WeatherTech Porsche number 79, Cooper McNeil, Matt Campbell, and Matthew Jaminet in the GT Pro category. That's something there. Trying to go and high class racing LMP2 for 2022 season. That'll be cool. LMDH Pro manufactured gateway of the future. Extended Pro Lifeline Pro Action Express.
So do you want to move on to Kyle Kirkwood?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm just zoned. My fault. The entry list for Road Atlanta, there will be 7 prototypes in the DPI category. Last race for Mazda for the foreseeable future. Oliver Jarvis, Harry Tingle, Jonathan Bomarito. Jimmy Johnson will be back with Kamui Kobayashi and Simon Pagano in the Ally Cadillac second Action Express car, along with the 31 Wheel and Engineering car. Ricky Taylor, Felipe Albuquerque, and Alexander Rossi with the Konica Minolta Wayne Taylor team trying to win the championship. Chip Ganassi, Cadillac team, Renger van der Zande, Magnussen in his last race for them before he moves over to Peugeot, and the WEC, and Scott Dixon. The French Connection and Mustang sampling, JDC Miller, Cadillac number 5, kind of had some rough luck. Want to go and come through in the spot. Dane Cameron, Elio Castroneves, and Juan Pablo Monterrier in the Meyer Shank 60. What is that? 6 Indy 500 wins. And then Dane Cameron, who's become one of the best sports car drivers out there in the Meyer Shank car. 5 entries in the LMP2 category. Ben Keating driving the PR1 Matheson car. You have United Autosports with Guy Smith, 22. Air Motorsport, Ryan Dial, number 18. And Thomas Merrill, Win Autosport, number 11. James French, John Ferrano, Gabriel Aubry, and the Tower Motorsport, number 8. In LMP3, there will be 10 cars in that. Oliver Askew, Jared Andretti in the number 36 car for Andretti Autosport. Spencer Pigot will be in the JR3 number 30. Mark Vami in number 747 car. Trying to go through the 54. John Bennett, George Kurtz, Colin Braun for Core. Gar Robinson, Felipe Fraga, Scotty Andrews in their Riley Motorsports car. Naveen Rao, Matt Bell, the Win Autosport number 83, Jim Cox, Dylan Murray, Urian Beeklemolin, and the Riley Motorsports number 91. GTLM will have Porsche with 2, BMW with 2, Corvette with 2, and then the GT Daytona will have 15 cars. It'll be very tightly contested the whole way. Josh, I'm going to go and pass to you here for a moment to go and talk about Kyle Kirkwood and what it means as the Road to Indy dominator who's won championships in multiple disciplines in open wheel can go and you can go and talk about what Kyle Kirkwood coming to AJ Foyt Racing means for the paddock in general, let alone what he's going to bring to AJ Foyt here this coming year.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Kyle Kirkwood, I mean, he's been a champion in Road Indy, obviously, and we all thought he'd get one of the Andretti rides. Of course, getting into the number 26 car. Of course, we all thought Colton Herta go into the Formula One ride over there, but that, of course, fell through and now kind of left Kyle Kirkwood hanging, of course, and didn't get into the fourth Andretti car there. But I mean, now he's in the 14 car, AJ Foyt Racing, signing the Indy Lights champion here. And it could be interesting, I think, with how this plays out. This car hasn't really been all that fast. I mean, there's been moments the past year with Sebastian Bourdais in the car, but of course, not really. All the results weren't really there for Bourdais. Now Bourdais is going part-time and going back to the sports car racing. Now he's going to replace Bourdais here. So could be interesting for the pace, especially with a young driver and kind of a subpar car. Could be interesting to see the results he's able to put. And also, compared to when you have a really good driver in a fast car, obviously you see his talent right away for the most part. In this car, he's going to have to definitely learn a lot of things with the Indy car and definitely try to get the most out of it and make, not overdrive the car, but certainly, be able to have the kind of, what am I looking for? Like, 10, or I can't remember, like the ability, just the ability, I guess, to be able to, handle the car throughout a race and not overdrive it and everything. So that's kind of what I'm looking for with him. And, as far as actual results, if he's able to finish in the top 10 more than not, that should be a pretty good improvement for the 14 car. And then also be really well for a young driver like that, especially someone who's really talented and can take a subpar car and, finish really well in it. So that's going to be something to look at here as we go forward for 2022 in the Indy cars.
Yeah, I mean, it's something for AJ Foyt to go and get somebody like Kyle Kirkwood drive that car. I think it's going to be good for the team, good for the series that he's going to be out there every week. Get that experience before he moves elsewhere, because I have doubts in regards to what they're going to bring every week. But for Kyle Kirkwood, big deal to be driving an IndyCar next year and having the opportunity to go and possibly go and put some results on the board going into next year in general. Next piece will be the Brazilian Grand Prix. Can Mercedes respond, Josh? What do they have to do to go and turn this thing around? Because it's getting really tight. It's getting kind of pretty straightforward. So we need to go and figure out how Lewis Hamilton can go and cut into this gap with 4 races to go. I
mean, it's pretty simple. He's got to be able to win this race, just like how the first championship for Lewis Hamilton. I mean, well, he didn't win the race in that one, but of course, won the championship in the last corner. And now here could be at the end of Lewis Hamilton's reign as a title champion in the Formula One series. But I think for Lewis, got to be able to win, get the fastest lap. They're going to get points from the sprint race as well. So it should be interesting to see if he's able to get points from that, finish first in the sprint race in qualifying. And then also it's going to have to hope that Max has a really bad race and unable to finish. I mean, even if Lewis were to win and Max doesn't score any points, then Max would lose the title lead to Lewis, and Lewis would of course gain it back and be up by like 6 or 7, maybe 8, 9 points. So it could be a huge swing, but it's highly unlikely. I think this is going to be a good race for Max Verstappen. Had a lot of history at this track. I mean, both of these drivers, of course. So in general, Mercedes is going to have to be really fast. They're going to have to be faster than Red Bull, but we just don't know how well it's going to take place for these guys. Looking at the history of this, going back, we can look at Formula One's races at the past couple of years at Brazil. We'll pull those up right now. Interlagos, Brazil. Sao Paulo is where this race will be held. So the last two races, of course, last year did not have any race due to COVID-19. And Lewis won 2018, and Max Verstappen finished second in that race, led 21 laps. Lewis led 46 laps. So clearly the race was very close, there's definitely a lot of change in that one. And then 2019, Max Verstappen dominated Brazilian Grand Prix, and Lewis Hamilton finished in seventh in that one. So could be interesting to see, and especially also, Pierre Gasly, Toro Rosso, Honda finished in second in that race. And so, talking about the history here with the Brazilian Grand Prix last 2 years, Max Verstappen winning 2019, Lewis won in 2018. So there's history on both sides. Of course, again, the first championship won here for Lewis back in 2008, but it's going to be a tough uphill battle for Lewis. It's basically, like I said earlier in the show, Hail Mary for him. Win the race, get fastest lap, win the sprint race, probably get points from that. And then I'm going to have to hope that Lewis has a really bad race. I hope that Max Verstappen is going to have a really bad race.
Yeah, I mean, the engine situation would state that may not happen. It would be if they're not going to allow to have an extra engine anyway. But you have Valtteri Bottas, who has 6 engines. That would be the way to go and make things happen. But Max has proven at a track where you can't pass anybody, albeit it needed to be epically crazy circumstances for him. Now, he said that Valtteri Bottas won Russia, he won Turkey. Lewis won his 100th race at Russia because of the crazy weather conditions and everything. Lewis needs to win at Brazil. It hasn't been one of his best tracks. He won a couple of years ago, but it hasn't been one of his best tracks. He needs to win here. He needs to win Saudi or Qatar and at Saudi to make the Abu Dhabi race actually matter, or needs Max Verstappen to have some sort of failure, which Red Bull is not known for having. So we will see what happens with that, what McLaren versus Ferrari will look like, what Pierre Gasly, who has done very well at Brazil, can he sneak a podium? To me, I think Max wins. I think he wins the pole, wins the sprint, goes and dominates the race, puts this thing farther out of reach. I want to see Lewis do what Josh was talking about, win the sprint, win the race, and gain some points on Max, so it's still interesting going into Qatar next week, which we'll talk about here on the GSP. But, it'll be something to see in regards to that. Were you able to, did you made your pick?
I'll go ahead and make it now that you're here. Pick in this race. Pole, Verstappen, race win, Verstappen, then podium, Lewis, and then Gasly on third place.
Yeah, that sounds about like what's going to end up happening anyway. Maybe Sergio Perez gets up there. Maybe you have Valtteri Bottas gets up there. But I have a hard time believing that really does happen. Football. I'll let you go first. You had the better Josh Allen on your Jacksonville Jaguars team for actual football. I have your Josh Allen in fake football. But give us how you beat one of the Super Bowl favorites, the Buffalo Bills, made them look you humbled them. And I guess Urban Meyer got to bang out some co-eds and get a victory there. Biggest victory in his early NFL career for sure.
Yeah, it was definitely a great win. This is my favorite type of game. Defensive struggle throughout on both sides, and low scoring. Where it's just comes down to field goals and everything. And I mean, it came down to basically the Bills didn't really have much of a running game. Not that they struggle to run the ball, but just that they choose not to run the ball. And most of their running comes through Josh Allen anyways on, design runs, QB scrambles, I think. And so they're just able to focus on the pass, take away that, and then they just continue to harass Josh Allen throughout the day. Josh Allen sacking Josh Allen intercepting Josh Allen fumble recovery on Josh Allen. So that's how it was, and helped you out on fantasy, and definitely helped you with beating Demi on there. So that was good for you. And then on the
Wilson,
Jags,
actually.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, Wilson. I was thinking Demi. I don't know why, but I face him this week. But yeah, you helped you defeat Wilson. So now we have no more undefeateds in the Fall Brawl League, which is good. Gives me a chance to get back into possibly getting a first place if it's even possible. We'll see. So at least you're able to beat the guy that was not that had been without any loss until now. So good for you on that end. Of course, the Jags, Taven Bryan probably had the best game of his career, earned his name back for at least one game. Because there's a joke that they mispronounce his name and it won't get pronounced correctly until he actually plays well. He had 2 sacks and pressured Josh Allen all day, so it was good. Defense played really well for once. Offense not so great, but they did what they needed to do to win. They were able to get the field goals when they needed to. Trevor Lawrence got hurt, and that was definitely a panic moment there. Especially Walker Little, the left tackle, letting him get blocked into Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence falls, hits his ankle on the ground, and gets a minor sprain, and had to leave the game for a minute. And then, CJ Beathard comes in. CJ beat hard. He's a gamer, and he's here to fuck. So that's how it is for him.
Yeah, that would be something if he actually did that when he was on the 49ers for like 4 years, but he definitely didn't do that.
Yeah, and then came in for a bit and had some pretty good balls, but then Trevor Lawrence came back in and wasn't really himself and wasn't as mobile and definitely played like he was hurt. So it's going to be a good storyline to get into for next week, see if play the Colts, if he's able to be what we're used to being with Trevor Lawrence. And of course, James Robinson didn't play. I think that definitely changed the game plan for the Jags, and they couldn't produce the same kind of offense they normally produce. They had Carlos Hyde on there. Didn't have
garbage former 49er.
Yeah, so didn't have the same game plan there. So hopefully, Trevor Lawrence doesn't have any issues against the Colts, and then they're able to get James Robinson back for the Colts as well. So should be interesting. And then fantasy, beat what's his name, Manny, pretty easily. And then my other league won that one pretty easily. So now 6-3 in this, 5-3 my other league. So looks like things are on the up and up, but of course it's always tough, and especially with the way seeding is going to work and everything. I mean, it's going to be a lot of tough matchups coming up here with the end of the league and then the playoffs. So gotta be able to get the team ready for the playoffs, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. In regards to that, I mean, you're lining yourself up. You're going to have a battle against Demi here this week, who might have a chance of sneaking in. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to align the playoffs here. I mean, Demi's had a high score. He beat me, I think, a few weeks ago. High points-wise, he would be 6th. Or no, actually, yeah, he would be 6th. Over Manny, who you beat. He's lost 3 in a row. Won't make any trades. I've offered him numerous trades. Offered him trades for guys that are now injured. Wouldn't make any moves. Manny and Demi are both the Pittsburgh Steelers marks. In my case, I beat, as Josh mentioned, I beat Wilson. Wilson's still finishing the top 5 and scoring for the week, the way everything worked out. And I'll just bring up, for the double record situation, he's 4 games ahead of Vic, 5 ahead of Josh, with 5 to play. In regards to actual play, Josh is closer. He's only two games or 2 points behind with a few weeks to go in regards to the league. I mean, for me to go and get a win over Wilson's a big deal. Had some great production out of Joe Mixon, who's on a bye this week. Of course, Jacksonville Josh Allen, 8 solo tackles there, 2 for loss, 1 sack. He had 8 tackle totals, 16. 1 sack, 1 interception, 1 fumble recovery, 1 pass defended, 2 for a loss. So he was a jack of all trades there to help me out. Quarterback position wasn't too great for either of us, or either myself or Wilson this week. McCaffrey made his return, didn't have him in the lineup. Might have made it a little more interesting, but solid team effort to go and get that victory going into week 10 of the season. When it comes to bringing that there, in regards to the actual Niners team, they didn't even show up on Sunday. It was one of the worst performances they've had under Kyle Shanahan. People that were working on my end weren't too compliant, but then the Niners basically were like, oh yeah, sure, let's go and randomly run into this or that or the other thing. They didn't really try to challenge them because they were trying to figure out what they have, but you gotta be able to go and battle against someone or something that isn't as good and go and make it happen in that spot and have the confidence to make it work. But there's also, other pieces in regards to that. Niners fans like myself are basically SOL because they're not good, and Kyle Shanahan isn't good. John Lynch isn't good, and Parag Marath and Jed York don't have a clue either. So they'd let me go and have a drunken, basically sit in front of on the fly or whatever with a hot chick and go and talk about all this stuff that's going on when getting further and further away from winning what matters most, which is the title, and knocking off somebody who isn't going to go and really press during regular weeks, but in current situation, it will press during a, quote, playoff week.
Yeah, they got to get it turned around here. They play Jags.
Yeah, the Niners, I think the Jags would probably be a 3-point favorite. The Niners, they have to play the LA Rams on Monday Night Football, so that could go really, really bad. But the funny part is, for as bad as Shanahan has been against everybody else in the league, he seems to have the LA Rams number. I knocked on whatever because I'm like, he'll go and they'll get blown out again, which is what happened, today, in regards to going in, things like that. You have to go and show up. And there's a lot of players on this team that haven't shown up yet. And there's veteran players that are mailing it in too. And there's a backdoor chance of making the playoffs if you actually try. And that's the whole point. If you try, you give yourself a chance. If you're not going to try, well, yeah, you deserve what's coming to you. And you're going to be sitting at home. And that's not acceptable to me as a fan or most people who are part of the faithful. But we'll see what happens in regards to what they do against Chicago. Josh, let us know where we can follow you and follow your live sim streams.
Yeah, as always, you watch those sim streams at Twitch TV/UCLR2. I think the NASCAR iRacing Cup Series, Xfinity Series, Next Gen Car. Think the first 2 are at Homestead, so it should be good. Try to run the top, maybe the middle. We'll see. Maybe send it in on the bottom. We'll see what happens, how the car feels. The Next Gen, I think, is at Indianapolis for whatever reason, so it might be interesting to see how does it feel on a big oval like that with flat corners. And how does it compare to the old car, especially in traffic, if the draft works better or you get a lot of that turbulent, dirty air. So it should be interesting. Then, as always, you can follow the Twitter at at JP Huffine, and then again the Twitch TV/UCLR2. Go watch the sim streams on there, and then go follow on Twitter. So yeah, that's what I have for me.
And you can follow me at Philip G. Matthew on Twitter. You can follow us at Gripstrip Pod on Twitter. We're on Amazon Music, Apple Podcast. Give me a sec right over here. Yeah, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Podbean, Pandora, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and TuneIn. So, I mean, we're out there. You want to go and follow us, you want to go and support us, throw a couple of bucks our way. It would be great. It would help us out in a lot of ways. But, yeah, we're going to see what happens in regards to all that. Whether I'm just driving them down, whatever. But, we'll see what happens. With that, we were on, it's a Twitter, we had Facebook, we're on YouTube with Gripstrip Pod, but also whatever our team in bowling. And we'll hope for the best. God bless to you. God bless to all that matters to you, as long as you're working reality and going and making the most out of life. So thank you for that, and going and doing what we can while we're training and doing the most out of what we have to do. So take care, and we will see you next week for episode 87, the Gripstrip Podcast, talking about all that took place this weekend in regards to NASCAR, supercars, and whatever else is going on. You can hear it here on the Gripstrip Podcast. Thank you for listening, and take care, and good night.